I want to welcome you to another edition of the Empowered Woman channel, recording, whatever you want to call it. My name is Dapo Lipede, Pastor Dapo Lipidi. I am the host of this channel. I am a certified leadership coach with the John Maxwell team. And today I want to talk about something that has been on my mind for a long time. And when I thought of it, at first I didn't know who to call, but somehow this guest of mine just reached out and we got talking. I just felt in my spirit that this was the person to invite. And so I bring to you a special guest today. Her name is Pastor Moji Olopade. Pastor, I want to welcome you.
Good evening, sister.
Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come speak to us. Before I start to ask Pastor Moji a few questions here, I'd like to introduce her real quick. Her name is Pastor Moji Olopade. She's a mental health clinical counselor. She's a certified, qualified mental health professional, and she's been in this health profession, mental health, for over 30 years. When you look at her, she doesn't look a day older than 30, but she does have 30 years experience. I've known Pastor Moji for many years, and one thing I can say about her is that she has stayed consistent. She is passionate about women. She wants to see women thrive. She wants to see women not fall into the issue of mental health, which recently has become a big issue. And because of her passion, I'm excited to bring her on today and to have her answer some of the questions that we have. Again, welcome, Pastor Moji, and thank you for agreeing to join us. Recently, I'm going to start, here. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about mental health, and especially because of the impact of COVID-19 on people. So I want to start by asking you what mental health is. And the reason I'm asking is because when you talk about mental health, people think, oh, they think I'm crazy. So what is mental health?
Okay. Mental health has to do with the stability of your mind, your emotions, your behavior, your feelings, the congruence of everything. That is, everything is working in harmony.
Okay.
Even when you are under stress. That means you have a good mental health.
Even when you're under stress?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I should ask you, how does stress relate to mental health then?
Very good question. Stress is like a precipitant. And what do I mean by that? When there is something talking. Stress is a precipitant. And what do I mean by that? Stress is a form of hormone called cortisol, that when you're under a pressure that something is going on around you, you begin to secrete something called cortisol. And when you secrete that, if you are mentally well, you'll be able to manage it and the stress will go away. But if you're not able to manage it well, it develops into like fatigue, because the cortisol will keep on coming. So it becomes a fatigue. And when you don't deal with the fatigue, it becomes like a burnout. Your emotions have been tampered with, your mind, your feelings, then you are crossing to the threshold of depression, which is mental health issue.
Depression is a mental health issue.
Wow. It is a mental health issue.
So
illness.
Let's back up a little bit. When we talk about mental health, we're talking about the stability of the mind. That's where you started.
Yes.
And then you ventured into stress, and I wanted to know what stress has to do with mental health. And I'm hearing you say that stress is pressure. we have different things that stress us. We have different things that put us under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So stress is a stressor. It's
Mm-hmm.
a precipitant
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to mental health.
Yes.
And if we don't manage stress
Well.
well, it can lead to depression. Wow. I'm not medically inclined, so I don't know what all these are. Can you help me and my viewers, my friends, can you help me understand what depression is? Because when we talk about depression, uh, you did say that depression is a form of mental health. What
Mm-hmm.
exactly is it?
Depression. Hmm. Depression. Let me start with the fact that people use the word depression carelessly.
Okay.
Some people will say, "Oh, I feel depressed today. Oh, I'm depressed." No, that's not depression.
Okay.
I'm talking in the area of clinical depression here. And I'm
Okay.
going to do my best to make sure I use very, very simple terms. So on the basis of that, I'm going to say depression is like an unjustifiable fear
Okay.
of something. When somebody is afraid that something that will not happen has already happened, then they become very sad. They become very sad and it continues. The type of depression I'm discussing here today is not like, oh, I'm depressed, let me go have ice cream and I'll be fine. No. Depression in the real sense of it is a persistent sadness, fear that lingers. And if it goes beyond a certain period and has some components with it, then that is when somebody could be diagnosed as depressed.
So depression could be a diagnosis.
Yes, it's a disorder.
It's a disorder,
Yeah, because
mental disorder.
mm-hmm.
Now, because of the pandemic, Pastor Moji, a lot of people, you hear people say that they're depressed. So what I'm hearing is that they may not necessarily be depressed.
Mm-hmm.
They may just be a little off in their emotions or in their feelings, but it's not what you're describing here. That is not clinical depression. Clinical depression is a disease,
Mm-hmm.
a diagnosis. Why would we get diagnosed with mental issues or depression?
Okay.
Why?
Okay, let me go backward a little bit because you said something that I want to clarify. The
Okay.
COVID, the pandemic. I don't
Yes.
want to rush away from it because pandemic caused a lot of stressors and people that were susceptible to have depression before, it increased it.
Okay.
And most of the time, depression is comorbid with anxiety. That is, it sometimes go along with anxiety. So many people, because of the uncertainty of what's going on in the world, it's jacked up their depressive moods, mood swings and things like that. There were so many other things that came along during the pandemic, COVID-19. But depression here, why would somebody or how would somebody be diagnosed with depression? Okay, I'm going to go in the area of diagnosis for a few minutes because when somebody is depressed, there are some things that you watch out for. And one of it is persistent sadness,
Mm,
persistent moodiness,
mm.
hopelessness, worthlessness, helplessness. Even if it's profound, it gets to the stage of suicide. Hopefully we will get to that today. If not, but some people, when they're that depressed, it could get to that stage. But there are so many things that could cause depression apart from COVID-19.
Okay.
But when you are going to diagnose somebody, you watch out for at least 5 the of the symptoms. There are some symptoms that you watch out for: hopelessness, helplessness, fatigue, loss of enthusiasm, loss of continuous tiredness, weight gain, unexplainable weight loss, increase in appetite, insomnia, so many things. But the person must have consistently 5 of this every day. And it has to run for 2 weeks before you can diagnose that person. You can't say because, oh, this person is not sleeping well, eating too much, feeling hopeless, then you say they are depressed. That's not disorder. That's not disorder. They must have at least 5 of this, and it must be happening repeatedly, consistently for 5 days and last at least 2 weeks. And you asked another question in between that I think I understand, where you said, why would somebody, okay, we talked about the stressors could cause it. Also, it could also be, especially for women, it could be postpartum. For women, it could be perimenopausal. For women, it could be menstrual, premenstrual period, depression. And also, people don't know that. And it could be even perinatal, during pregnancy. It could also, because we're talking about empowered women today, so I'm trying to concentrate more on women. For women also, it could be SAD, seasonal anxiety disorder, or sometimes depressive disorder. So some people, it's during the season like winter season or summer season, that they have depression.
Oh, so what I'm hearing you say is that depression, mental health issues, because I want us to be as broad as possible. Okay. Mental health issues could be seasonal. So maybe winter comes around and somebody just falls into whatever mental state. Yes. Why? Okay, so let me ask a different question. For us women, we deal with a lot. We're wives, we're moms. Even when we are not married, we usually have a lot on our plates. We're caring for people within our families, uncles, aunts, nieces, nephews. We have a lot on our plate. And you find out that women do get stressed quite a bit. When a woman gets stressed, is it necessary for her to go to the hospital to say, check my mental health? You know how we go to the hospital for physical checkups, how we go for, menopausal, whatever, regular checkups. Is mental health something we should check regularly as women, knowing that we have various stressors?
Okay.
Knowing that a woman can get anxious over her children. Maybe my children are traveling, I'm like, oh my God, I'm anxious. A woman could be anxious about a family member, a parent, a loved one that is sick. When we do get stressed, is this the reason for us to go check out our mental health? There is a lot of talk right now about mental health, and I want us to address the issue of women.
Okay.
What do we, because I said, why even go for a diagnosis? Why?
Okay.
Why can't we just live life and just live life?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. The way you phrased it, I'm going to go beyond it.
Okay.
When a woman is stressed, let me start with the fact that as a Christian, I want to use a phrase. Women are mini burden bearers.
True. Very true, Pastor.
They carry a lot of burdens.
Yes.
They are caregivers. They are providers of themselves. They give themselves regularly. And events do happen around them that causes their stressor level that is escalate beyond even sometimes management. But let's take it from when they are stressed naturally. They don't need to go to the hospital. But when they are stressed ongoing, when you come to the house and you find a woman crying for days non-stop with no reason, that woman needs a check if it continues for 2 weeks.
Okay.
When a woman, yes, we are prone to be tired after running errands, taking the children to the daycare, going to the university to check on the children, making sure the husband is fine, making sure the home is maintained, making sure the bills are paid. Women do a lot of things.
Correct.
We can be tired.
Yeah.
But when the tiredness is becoming excessive, that even the normal daily activities, the woman is no longer interested. I'm going to interject. The woman lost interest in sex. The woman lost interest in meeting with her friends. The woman doesn't want to spend time with her family. Maybe she's just sleeping or crying or just complaining, I'm tired, and seem like the world is falling on them, that she's kind. Such a woman should talk to a PCP. They don't need to go to a mental health provider at that time, but they should bring it to the attention of their PCP that they are feeling certain way, so that he or she could ask them more questions to be able to determine if this is something that needs extra care, so that they can direct the woman to the proper place. But you do mention something, and I'm going to address that also. We do go for physical checkup.
Correct.
I am begging every woman that is listening to me today. There is nothing wrong with going for mental wellness checkup too. You can do it at home too, or you listen to those around you, because those around you know you better. But it is expected of people generally, especially women that carries a lot, to do mental wellness check as they do their physical health check.
Thank you, Pastor Moji.
You're welcome.
Mental wellness check. That's a new one to me. I have never heard that you go for a mental wellness check. Well, maybe I've not needed it. Maybe I needed it and I didn't know. But when we're talking about mental wellness check, kind of like going for a medical checkup is what you're saying.
Yep.
What does it entail? What
does it entail?
What does it entail? What do I need to do? You know, a lot of women during the pandemic were at home, caring for families, caring for. I have not been to work outside of my home for a year now. I'm from home because that's pretty much the new normal now. Has it affected my mental stability? I've not gone for a mental wellness check, so I may not know. But I think I'm still screwed up, right? I think. And you know, the symptoms you have mentioned. Of course, there are times when, you know, one is tired, exhausted from, you know, too much things. We have a lot of stressors, you know, but if I haven't gone for a mental wellness check and I'm at home and people are, you know, giving me feedback, I need to listen and go see a doctor, right? But how can I prevent this mental health issue? How can I prevent it so that I don't get to the point where people start to tell me that I need to go for one? And I'm talking to every woman now, because as women, we carry a lot. I've spoken to, during the pandemic, at a point, I was like, I think I'm going crazy just sitting at home. And I spoke to my boss. I didn't go for a mental wellness check, but I spoke to a friend of mine who's my boss. And she said, just get out of that house. It gets old, just get in the house. So again, back to my question, how can we as women who do so much. How can we prevent a situation where we slip into mental health issue or into depression? I'm sure there are different aspects of mental health that we could talk
Oh,
about.
yeah.
Yeah, but you went quickly to depression, so let's stick with depression. What can I do to prevent myself from getting there?
Okay. Let me start with pandemic has caused a lot of people, particularly women, to be cooked in, because majority don't go out. Once they sit down at their desk in the morning working, they tend not to even remember to get up. So one of the things I'm going to suggest to women generally, if we are working from home, first, we need to always be conscious of self-care. We need to take care of our wellness by, first of all, being careful of how many hours we spend on the job. We must learn to take a break as you would at work. You must do your schedule in such a way like you're at work. Don't sit down at that screen and sit down there all day that you don't even have 8 hours on the job anymore. You are spending like 12 hours. No, that's not right. Know when to say no, even if your boss sends you another assignment. Not only that, be careful of the time you spend, the screen time. The screen time is another problem, because when you get so fixated on the screen, it's affecting your eyes, it's affecting other areas of your psyche. Also, learn to, when you take a break, maybe move away completely from the job. Go out there, get fresh air, get vitamin D. You can hang around even outside your door. When you are working, make sure that if you need to snack, you're not snacking on wrong things. Because one of the problems with mental illness that many people don't know is processed food sometimes triggers it if you have tendency to have it.
Wow.
Then, as I've always told people, please always know when to say no. You don't have to please anybody. Make sure you please yourself first. Also, try to have if you have young children in the house, try to have a good schedule with the children so that the children will know when to go to bed. The children would have scheduled class time, especially when they're out of school now. When they were out of school then, and they might be out of school because we are not sure what Delta variant is doing right now. So you need to make sure that you put everything in perspective so that you're not overwhelmed, because loneliness is one of the triggers of this illness, especially if you have a tendency to have it. If you are in there alone, maybe your husband has gone to work and the children are making noise and things like that, it could exacerbate other things, even in your medical issues too. Because during this pandemic, we noticed that people with migraine, it increased a lot with them.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's composition of so many things. So a person must be able to know that I want to take care of myself first. Self-care is very, very, very important. I'm not saying be selfish, but put yourself first. And whatever you cannot do, don't make effort to do it right away, but try. Try to do, but don't overdo. And one more thing I'm going to say, I want to say this. Okay. I'm not sure if you're going to get there. Because of the COVID-19 and because of how we women are, we have the tendency to compare ourselves. But Mrs. Z could go to the market, she could take care of 10 children, but I can't take care of one. Don't do that to yourself. Don't compare yourself with anybody, and don't be too critical of yourself. Just take care of yourself.
Thank you. I'm taking notes too, because This isn't just about helping women. Charity begins at home. I must
Yeah.
help myself too. And here's what I heard. It's interesting. We were talking about mental health at work this week, and some of the things you shared here were mentioned.
Mm.
One of the things that we talked about was how do we take care of ourselves? Self-care, self-care, and that has been that has been uh, should I call it one word or two words that I've heard a lot recently? Self-care. Self-care as a way of preventing burnout, as a way
Mhm.
of preventing
Mhm.
mental health issues,
Mhm.
as a way of preventing fatigue, breakdown.
Mhm.
Self-care. Take time to go to the spa. Take
Yeah.
time to do your
Exercise.
nails. Take
Yes.
time to go for a facial.
Pamper yourself.
Take
Pamper yourself.
pamper yourself.
Spoil yourself.
Put your feet in water. And
Yes.
I have
Right.
found that when I go for a pedicure, for example, it
Mhm.
takes a little bit of stress. When you soak your feet in water,
Mhm.
it helps to distress a
Yes.
lot of times.
Yes.
But another thing we talked about at my job was breaks, incorporating breaks into your schedule. So you have your outlook,
Mhm.
and it's from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You have meetings back to back,
Mhm.
nothing in between for breaks. We're being encouraged at my job to make sure that we take breaks, and not just take breaks, walk away from your
From
desk,
the screen. Yeah.
walk away from the screen. We have a lot of meetings on Teams and Zoom these days. Walk away from the screen. Take a break, take a walk. I have a colleague who would, spend her break walking, and I learned from her. So I would go on walks too on my break. It's only 15 minutes, right? I walk around my block, my um, estate, and it takes me about 15, 20 minutes, and I'm back home, back at my desk. It's refreshing. I breathe in fresh air.
Mhm.
I get my steps in. I'm shooting for 10,000 steps a day since working from home. I don't think I've hit that 10,000 in a
Mm.
while. But when I was working outside of my home, I would walk around my building and make that 10,000 steps easily. So self-care breaks, eating right. That is huge. That is huge. And one of the reasons I say that is huge is that when I don't eat well, sometimes I have headaches
Yeah.
because I'm feeding myself with junk.
Junk.
Now, as I'm feeding myself with junk, I'm stressing my body, I'm
Yeah.
stressing myself. That's another stressor, yet we don't know it. We'll take our kids to McDonald's, we'll take them to Burger
Yeah.
King.
Mhm.
But I could go to the store and buy Beyond Meat. I know people are going to say Beyond Meat, but I can go to the store and buy Beyond Meat and make some of these patties at home myself.
Mhm.
Put it in a lettuce wrap and eat it as a burger instead of eating bread. I, for example, don't eat bread. So eating right, breaks, avoid being overwhelmed, put
Mhm.
yourself first, self-care again, learn to say no,
Mhm.
and avoid trying to catch up with the Joneses.
Avoid it.
A lot of times I've met with women who would work hard, work
Mm.
extra hard, work
Mm.
themselves to the bones until they break down just
Mm.
because they're trying to make that extra dollar, trying to make that extra this so that they can buy this, so that they can buy that. It's not about things. If we don't put ourselves first, um, these mental health issues are bound to come up, just
Mhm.
like you're telling us, Pastor. Now we're
Yeah.
talking about women having mental health issues, dealing with mental health issues.
Mhm.
You're encouraging us as women to go for mental wellness checks. But how how can we how can we help Christian women
Mhm.
to handle this?
Mhm.
Because as Christian women, well, not so much now that the pandemic has come, we want to be in church.
Mhm.
We want to be the usher. We want to be this. We want to do everything. We want to be noticed, not realizing that these things they constitute stressors,
Mhm.
and those stressors are taking us down a path that we really don't want to. How can we help Christian women?
Mhm.
Because we also don't want them to shirk their responsibilities. And when I talk about Christian women, I'm talking about the empowered women. Empowered.
Mhm.
When
Mhm.
we're empowered, it means we're carrying the Spirit of God on the inside
Yes,
of us.
exactly.
And when we have received the Spirit of God and He's on the inside of us, what do we do to prevent a breakdown, mental health breakdown,
Okay.
as empowered women?
All right. As empowered women, I'm going to speak from the perspective of a Christian woman. One of the things I would suggest is, as a child of God or empowered woman, you need to know your limits.
Okay.
You need to know your limit. And that goes back to no, saying no. I would suggest that for every woman, we must learn to know ourselves. Because when you know yourself, you will know when you are crossing your boundary at work, at home, or at the church. As an empowered woman, you don't have to do every assignment that is given to you at church, as long as you're not refusing rudely. Because I want to make sure that I bring this out. For every time a church service is going on, 1 out of 5 people there has mental health problem.
Wow.
In the United States, 20% of the adults in the congregation has mental health problem. 15 to 20% of the young adults, youth, has mental health problem. So if somebody, as a pastor, if a member is telling me, Pastor, I can't do this, we must always be considerate of what else is going on here that this person is not telling me, rather than taking offense that they don't want to serve in the church. So the church must grow to be aware that a lot has happened, especially in the recent time. And rather than us taking offense when an empowered woman say, I can't do this today, we should be available. One of the things I would suggest, I'm not really sure if I'm going the route of your question or something, but I want to bring this up, that we should be available to be supportive of that person rather than take offense. And if they're strong enough to share, we should direct them to the proper care. One of the things I say to people is, if you're not trained, don't diagnose anybody.
Mm.
Do not.
That's key.
Also, if you're a part, there's pastoral counseling, there's mental health counseling. Because you have education in pastoral counseling does not qualify you to be a mental health counselor unless you go to school for that. Rather, make a referral. Because this pandemic has created more problem. Before, people could go outside their home to socialize with friends. They could go to church and congregate with their fellow members. They could go to visit grandparents. They could take the children to the park. They could do so many things. But pandemic did not permit that. And it had affected a lot of people beyond what we can even say right now. So it's always good to be alert, be observant, and be supportive.
Thank you, Pastor. So we've talked about a few things here. We've talked about knowing our limits. You know, sometimes we think that because we're empowered women, we're superwomen. No, we're not. We have strengths, we have weaknesses, and we must know what our strengths are and know our limits. That's one thing. Know yourself. So the fact that Pastor Moji can diagnose does not mean that I can diagnose. I must know myself, because I'm not a clinical health clinical counselor. So and this goes back to trying to be like the Joneses. I don't have to be like you. What am I trying to prove? Our callings are different.
Yep.
Our paths run parallel. So I shouldn't try to be like you, but I should know myself and know my limits. One
Yes.
thing I also wrote down, even though you didn't put it this way, is for us to be open and to be vulnerable. A lot of times as women, when we're going through things or going through issues, we don't want to talk to anybody. We don't want to be ashamed. We don't want people to say, oh, I didn't know she had that issue too. But if we're not open and vulnerable, we may not get the help that we need. So we need to know our limits, we need to know ourselves, we need to be open, we need to be vulnerable so that where we need help, we can get help. Preventing mental illness involves all of these things you have talked about: knowing ourselves, knowing our limits, being open, self care, taking breaks, eating right. When we talk about eating right for you could be different than eating right for me. Since the top of the year, I cut out meat, I cut out chicken. I only recently returned to chicken and just a little bit. I cut those out because I wanted to be pescatarian. I eat just fish and shrimp. Recently, I went back to eating some chicken, but not a lot of beef because of some things I read. In my attempt to eat right and keep my mental stability, I'm eating the things that I believe are good for me. So my question to our viewers and to anybody, man, woman who's listening, what do you feed yourself? A lot of times we're feeding ourselves with junk. Now, Pastor, talk to me a little bit about how the junk we feed ourselves. So going out to eat, nothing wrong with it. But when you go out, what are you eating? When you go out to eat, you go to McDonald's, what are you eating? Are you getting the, when they ask you if you want to make it a large, you're getting the large drink and you're drinking pop. I haven't had pop since 2001. I believe. I don't drink soda, and this has been since 2001. But some people cannot do without it. Tell me what eating junk does to our mental health.
Okay. Let me start with, I'm going to quickly respond to something that we missed. Sorry, talk about something that we missed before I go to that.
Sure.
Mental health has been stigmatized.
Okay. What do
But
you
I
mean?
want to beg every empowered woman not to be ashamed. It's just a noise. It's not a taboo. This is why we need to disclose, especially to the people that can help us. It is been stigmatized, though the world is now getting aware of the fact that this is an illness of the mind. So people are a bit acceptable of this lately, but yet people still look down on others when they think they had mental health. But it's not something that you should be ashamed of. I want every empowered woman to know that, because it's millions and hundreds of millions of people in the world has it. So don't be ashamed. Now let me go back to the food. Many a times we go to McDonald's, we go to all these fast food places, we eat the food that has been processed. And when we eat processed food instead of whole food, what we do is we are feeding not only our bodies, but even our minds wrong. We're sending wrong nutrition to our mind. We're not feeding our minds right. And when we don't do that, our brain is telling us that this is what this is supposed to be and it's not supposed to be here, then it begins to react against it. So sometimes we eat a lot of sugar. It not only affects us medically, it also affects us mentally, because our brain is not supposed to have that much quantity. So it sets us on another wavelength, then we begin to become hyper, especially, let's say hypothetically, somebody that's supposed to be manic, and that person is also eating a lot of sugar. The person has already had energy from what is wrong with them, then the sugar is setting it higher. So they begin to act irrationally. And like my sister said, she said, we take our children to McDonald's. The youth of this nation, at least 83% of the youth of the United States has mental health problems.
Wow. Wow. I'm part of
Because
it. deriving from what we feed them.
Yes, what we feed them, we take them, they buy this, they buy large, they buy soda, they buy this, we just, oh, this thing is out there. We give them what we should not be giving them under the auspice of bad parental care. And all this sometimes leads to mental health problem too. Because some children, you just see them at age 6, 7, they have opposition defiance disorder. Because of even what they're eating is making them act irrationally. So the food we eat, in the past, we have been trained to believe that the food we eat, we need it for our medical wellness. But I want us to know that the food we eat, we need it for our mental wellness also.
Wow. I'm going to write that down. We need food.
Yes.
Good food. Let me
Yes.
underline that. Good food for our mental
wellness.
Yes. Wow.
Yes.
Pastor Moji,
I'm sorry, Pastor, that, but let me quickly say this. We need to eat like lots of vegetables, lots of fiber food, rather than all this carbohydrates. We eat more of carbohydrates than all the natural food. And there's no balance in what we eat. And it affects how we think, how we act, how we feel.
Talking about that, it just reminded me that when a person gets drunk, they have just filled themselves with something. We call it a spirit because they're drinking spirits. They fill themselves with something that makes them not rational. It changes their mental capacity. I don't want to say capacity, but maybe capability. Because they don't have the capability to think rationally anymore. And so without realizing it, the foods that we take in sometimes affect us in the same way.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. It's like you said, sometimes when you drink alcohol, you don't know how it goes to. So also the food, because our brain, everything works together, and that's a congruence I was talking about with the mental health earlier on. Our physical, our psychological, and our everything, mind and everything works together. And if we are feeding any part of our body in the wrong way, they speak to one another. And when the signal is wrong, we feel it in the outward.
Wow. I never thought that what we eat affects our mental capability. But as you were speaking, the analogy of the drunk person just came to me. And I realized that, oh my goodness, it is exactly the same thing. At this point, Pastor, we're going to stop. We may have to come back to discuss some more of these issues. And I don't mind making this a series, bringing you back a second and a third time so that we can get to some of these other things that we were not able to talk about. But for those who are viewing, I want us to think about mental wellness as part of our entire well-being, part of our entire health. So in other words, like Pastor Moji has said, the same way we go for medical checkups is the same way we should be going for mental wellness checkups. I'm still struggling with putting all those words together. But in order to avoid slipping into mental health issues, self-care is important. Taking breaks is important. We can't keep working. I know some of us have young children and we're running up and down, but for crying out loud, find somebody you can leave your children with. Go out on a date night with your husband. Go out one evening. If your husband doesn't want to go, leave the kids with him, let him stay. If your wife doesn't want to go, leave the kids with her, let her stay. But you go out, take a break, get some fresh air, and just pamper yourself, like Pastor said. Eat right, avoid being overwhelmed, put yourself first, learn to say no, avoid trying to be like the Joneses, and eat well. Know your limits. I think I already talked about eating well. Know your limits, know yourself, be open, be vulnerable. And as you do all these things, you are more likely to prevent mental health issues. in the future. Now you can prevent it and also prevent it for the future. So I want to encourage everyone listening, every empowered woman listening to me. Or maybe somebody in your life, your spouse, is who is struggling with this. This isn't just for women. Mental health is for everybody. We just had pastors say that a lot of youth are struggling with mental health. If there's one thing I want to ask of you today as you listen, take a look at yourself, do an inward look, review yourself, and examine yourself to see if some of these things are occurring in your life. Maybe you're not eating right, maybe you're not caring for yourself, you're not taking breaks, you're being overwhelmed, you're constantly tired, constantly exhausted. You need to slow down, take a step back, and tell yourself that, hey, I want to love me, put myself first, and avoid mental health issues. If you're getting exhausted, see your primary care physician, talk to them. They might be able to refer you to a mental health physician who will do a wellness check in the area of mental health. I remember when Pastor and I were talking, she said going for a mental wellness check is necessary, and it's just like doing a physical exam. I still can't wrap my head around it, but I believe you because you've been doing this for 30 years, Pastor. But if we need to, then we should go. And I know that we have capable personnel in terms of doctors who are willing and ready to help us. Reminds me of when I had knee issues. I was struggling with my knees for a long time. I had pain in my knees. It was so bad I couldn't go exercise for some time. And I spoke to my primary care physician, just exactly what you recommended today. And she said, this is what you need. And she treated my knee, and I'm good. I've gone back to exercising now. I've gone back to I've gone back to walking, long distance, walking a mile, 2 miles sometimes in a day, just to stay fit and to keep my mental stability. I want to thank you, Pastor Moji. I want to thank you very much. This is a very difficult topic. This is a topic that people don't want to talk about. And so I salute you in agreeing to come speak about this. And like I said, we're going to talk more about this. So I'm definitely going to have you come back so that we can share more on the topic of depression. Because you went there for a minute and then I brought you back. So because I wanted us to talk about mental health. But I'd like us to talk about depression. What does it look like? How do we help somebody who's in depression? How do we even know that somebody is in a state of depression? What are the signs? What are the symptoms that we can help people? There have been a lot of incidents of suicide in different parts of the world. There have been instances of shooting because people did not have the mental stability that they needed. And so we want to talk about some of these things, depression, anxiety, and definitely we'll bring you back. Thank you. I don't know if you want to close with anything, 1 word, 2 words, a summary, anything, just to help our sisters who are viewing and who will be viewing at a later date.
I just want to remind empowered women that, first of all, you're very beautiful.
Amen.
You women out there, and you're built to be very strong, but do not get carried away. Know when to stop. Take care of yourself. Rest well. Rest well when you need to rest. Take a break. You don't need to please anybody. You are not proving a point. The Lord bless you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor. I love that. You don't need to be pleased anybody. Sometimes we try to be super women, but we are not. Thank you for listening in today. I pray that this has blessed you. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message, and I'll be happy to connect you with Pastor Moji if necessary. If I'm able to answer the questions, I will, but if I'm not, Pastor Moji is here to help us.
Yes.
And God bless you. God will bless all of us. Thank you, Pastor Moji. God bless you.
You're welcome.
And, God reward you for helping me to speak into the lives of women who may need the message today. God bless you. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, sis.
Yeah.